one umbrella, one Cold War assassination, and one toxin that later slipped into pop culture in one of its darkest corners. So we're going to talk ricin today. So, welcome, seekers, to this week's The Haunting Truth and the next installment in our Poison Garden mini series. This is Woo, and with me, as always, is Janice like Jen, not because she has two faces like the Roman god, but because she can look ahead and behind like the victim in our story probably should have. But before we go on, we got to get the disclaimer, of course. So, this episode discusses ricin. It's a toxin and it's associated with poison and murder. And we are going to explore its cultural, botanical, and historical context. However, we will not provide instructions, measurements, or guidance on how to handle, prepare, or use it. And all information is presented for educational and storytelling purposes only. Nothing in this episode or said by us should ever be taken as any kind of practical advice. So,
Yeah, we're not telling you how to off somebody, like FYI.
yeah, we're not gonna do
We're
that.
not giving you, this is not the anarchist cookbook here. We're
It's
not
not.
doing it.
Although
No.
I'm fairly sure either one of us could off somebody without getting caught. I'm just saying.
I don't know. Foxglove is now like not really detectable, but you can't import it any longer.
Well, we
I'm
just
just
gotta.
saying.
I'm sure it's growing in somebody's garden somewhere. I
It's
could probably just go
somewhat
get
somebody's garden. And we'll have that for a future episode probably.
it. We might. It's on the list. I think it's on the list. So,
hmm
are you familiar with ricin?
I think I am familiar with Ricin, but and of course I lived through the episodes of terrorist mailbox attacks that happened previously.
Hmm.
And I think it was the early 90s, so I remember that very vividly. But and for those of you who don't remember it, I believe that there was a specific person who was putting ricin in mail back in the 90s.
Was that anthrax or was that ricin?
I think it was both.
Okay.
So I
All
think
right.
there was some anthrax, but I think that there was at least two ricin attacks, and it was
Hmm.
on. I think one was a personal and one was a government facility. So it was really in the news back in the day.
All right. Well, I'm gonna have to take a look at that. But there it kind of tracks in that it was somebody using it as a weapon because I think most people are familiar with ricin these days due to its use in one of the greatest TV shows of all time, in my opinion, Breaking Bad. So if you remember, if you've watched, I don't know, did you watch the series or not?
I caught bits and pieces of the series,
You
but of
really
course,
gotta,
like I
you really
know
gotta watch it.
everybody tells me the same thing, but I have seen, I believe, this specific episode of
Well,
Breaking
this
Bad.
well,
So,
this one happens repeatedly because it's actually one of the plot lines behind the scenes. It first shows up in season two, where Walt's using it as a potential weapon
mhm.
against one of his
Yeah, I think that's the one I saw
things,
because it
right?
was early, yeah,
Then it
early in
shows
the
up as
episode.
it shows up in three like as a threat. It shows up as four and drives a plot line with his partner, and then it shows up again in the finale. So it really, I don't want to give it away, but you really need to watch the show. So anybody that's watching, that's probably where you've heard the word ricin so far. So it is actually pretty common. It's a protein that's found inside the seed of a plant that grows everywhere in gardens, along roadsides, across warm climates around the world, and it's been used for thousands of years. Ancient Egyptians pressed it into lamp oil. Traditional medicine has used it as a laxative, and even today, it's a common industrial ingredient. So, what plant are you asking? That would be the castor oil plant.
Oh, yes, if any, I've definitely had castor oil before.
Yes, that's why I don't want to give it away too early. So that's right. The seeds of this commonly used plant contains a protein that disrupts the body's ability to make essential proteins. And that's important because every cell in your body needs proteins to stay alive. So ricin starts at the beginning and just disrupts all of your body functions from the start. Your cells shut down because there's no protein, then your organs shut down because your cells are shutting down. At the same time, your body goes into a huge stress response to try and undo the damage that's happening in there, fevers, weakness, your blood pressure falls, GI distress, nausea, all that. But all of that takes time. It can take days, which is what makes it so deadly because as you'll see, our victim wasn't even aware that he was poisoned at the time that he was.
So you're just sitting there living your best life, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I don't feel so good. And then it just like slowly like deteriorates you.
Yep,
Oh, that's like a snake bite. That sucks.
it's really bad. There's really not a whole lot I can do. And it's not,
Like
it's
that.
not,
I'm like, and there's not really much you can, because by the time you figure it out, you're probably like halfway dead anyway.
yeah, it's too late then. You can't. Like their
Yeah.
organ damage is just so done that you can't even recuperate from that. So for what's the word for the folks that always like make themselves think they're sick all the time and then they start manifesting it?
Is
Psychosomatic
it
something.
psychosomatic?
Yeah,
I
so if
was
you're
gonna say Munchausen by proxy, but that's something else.
no, it's something else.
That's something
But
else.
but for any of us or anybody that's listening that knows those people that can make themselves sick, please don't explain how ricin works because they'll be sitting there and get a chill and then think that they've been poisoned and it'll just go overly dramatic and you don't need it.
Yeah,
But
that is WebMD.
where our story takes us, I got to give a little bit of a history lesson, which I know is odd coming from me. But we're going to go to London, 1978, during a very tense and dangerous phase of the Cold War. So, the Cold War, for those who are not familiar with that, was a decades-long period of political tension and rivalry between the Soviet Union and the US after World War II. And this was a world that had two opposing systems. You had democracy, power that comes from the people, free elections, free citizens, you can hold your own private holdings, versus communism, which was a society predicated on the thought that nobody would have class, all property would be community. But what actually happened was in practice, the communist governments actually became one-party governments and that controlled the politics and the economy. So there was a whole lot going on. And key moments of the Cold War that you may be familiar with are including the Berlin blockade in 1948, the Korean War
Hmm.
in the 50s, of course the Cuban Missile Crisis in 62, right? So
And the Vietnam War.
I didn't, okay. I don't know if that was part of, yeah, I guess it would be.
Yeah,
Have to be,
it
right?
was because of yeah, because communism was taking over.
Well, then you can fit that right on in there. So what was different about this war is that, well, besides the actual wars that were going on within it, the Korean War and so on, the two superpowers competed through espionage,
Mhm.
propaganda, nuclear arms buildup. So it was more of the behind the scenes. It wasn't the direct battle in your face. It was kind of laying all the groundwork and seeing what you could find out behind. So as you can imagine, this meant constant suspicion and covert operations going on all the time.
Mhm.
And this is where we meet Georgi Markov. He was born in 1929 and was a Bulgarian novelist, playwright, and screenwriter. He ended up defecting from Bulgaria in 1969 and moved to London, and then became a broadcaster for the BBC World Service and Radio Free Europe. He became known for his sharp satires and his critiques against the Bulgarian government, which was communist. And his broadcast really focused on corruption, repression, and hypocrisy, and it was pretty popular. He was widely heard across Eastern Europe, which made him a high-profile dissenter. So if I'm going to call you back to the last Poison Garden episode with Socrates and or
Mhm.
Socrates, however you want to refer to him, he was also a high-profile dissenter. So you can see
Yes.
this is a common theme that's going on. So in Sofia, Bulgaria, the state security, with the assistance from the KGB, took notice of what he was doing. So, more history. The KGB, for those who don't know who that is and hasn't watched any James Bond films, which I'm going to list in the resource notes if you really need to understand that, it was the Soviets' main security and intelligence agency. It really acted as a secret police force and was famous for its espionage.
Yep.
So I would tell you what KGB stands for, but I cannot attempt Russian without blowing out somebody's eardrum. So we're just going to keep it with the KGB. I like to spell it out, but we're not going to do that
Yeah.
this time.
Mm-mm. No.
So on September 7th, 1978, London, the birthday of Bulgarian leader Todor Zhivkov,
Hmm.
Markov walked across the Waterloo Bridge on his way to work at the BBC, probably thinking about what he was going to be talking. But as he waited there for the bus, a stranger brushed past him and jabbed him lightly in the thigh with the tip of an umbrella.
Oh,
Markov felt a sting. Man apologized in a thick accent and then disappeared into a waiting taxi. Everybody goes on about their way. Within hours, Markov had developed a fever, and by nightfall, he was vomiting. Doctors were baffled. 3 days later, he was dead. So the autopsy revealed the truth. There was a tiny metal pellet, smaller than a pinhead, and I'm going to put that in the resource notes, drilled with two microscopic holes, and inside was ricin, that toxin from the castor bean plant. It was undeniable and unmistakably intentional, therefore, an assassination. Now, British investigators, they traced the method of poisoning via ricin back to Soviet laboratories that were known for developing exotic assassination tools. And they think that the umbrella was likely
hmm.
modified to fire the pellet using compressed gas, a weapon that was designed to be close range in public space killings, could pass as accidents. I do have a picture also of the umbrella construction in the notes that we're going to post on there.
This is
But
some
yeah,
James Bond stuff.
it's crazy. It's crazy.
It's
But it
so
wasn't
crazy.
it wasn't just an assassination, it was a demonstration of power, the kind that hides in sight.
Yep.
So to this day, no one has been formally charged. But the message is clear that words can be dangerous, and for regimes built on silence, a single voice can be a threat worth killing. What do you think about that? That's crazy.
That is insane. But think about it. I think there's been quite a few incidents where the KGB or secret police and everything else like that in Russia has done something similar.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I think there's quite a few films that even articulate just how
Yeah,
like
there's a
big it goes.
lot. There's a
Yeah.
lot. I remember, I want to say even like growing up when I was watching MASH, because it was like the only thing on like the three channels we had on our TV because we didn't have cable.
Yes.
It was like, I think it was when 17 and 29 were introduced, and it was on one of those. But we were watching MASH all the time. And I think I remember KGB being in a MASH episode as well.
Yeah, I think so too, that there was like a secret KGB when they were visiting like the
Something.
capital city or something like that. So
Yeah, but the whole
it's
history of the
it's
KGB and espionage is fascinating. I want to go to the Spy Museum. I think there's one in
yes.
DC.
Yeah, I wanted
Uh,
to go there a couple of times. I'm like, that seems interesting of just like all the real life gadgets that have been
mhm.
created. Because
I think,
apparently in James Bond, I think even specifically said a lot of the stuff that they got was from real like spy stuff.
oh yeah, yeah, I'm sure. And for the James Bond movies that reference it specifically, it's From Russia with Love, The Spy
Hmm.
Who Loved Me, A View to a Kill, GoldenEye, and The World Is Not Enough. So it's even like the older ones, all the way even to the more recent ones.
Right.
That it's in there. But yeah, it's fascinating. I always wanted one. I always wanted the James Bond car that shot like the oil slicks out of the back and had like the
Yes.
like the stuff that came out on the
I
side.
would love that.
That would come in so handy in traffic. Ugh, I don't know.
And I
But
do have to like address so like I don't have my regular water bottle today
oh
and
no,
I didn't want to advertise something so I put my glove on.
that's
So
great.
so
Oh,
I went to drink and I was like, it looks like I'm waving at people right now. So,
actually,
so
all you can see. Well, now when you pull it up, you can see it. Yeah,
mhm.
somebody was gonna call you on that. Be like, what
So
the
yeah,
heck
so I
are you
had to
doing?
address it. I like realized I'm gonna get called out on this one. I might as well just address it.
That's too funny. Ugh. All right. So why does his assassination matter? And it does because it became one of the most infamous acts of the Cold War covert violence that was going on. And it symbolized the lengths that these authoritarian governments, spit it out eventually,
Yeah.
would go to silence their critics abroad. And it really highlighted that whole era's climate of paranoia, espionage, and political repression.
Hmm.
So that is where we are with today's episode. So I think in the next Quiz and Guard episode, which will not be next week, we're going to have another Agens drop there. But when we come back to the next Poison Garden episode, we are going to feature a plant whose name graces the solo debut album cover of a two-time Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee, once for her group and once for her solo career. Fun fact, I can also sing every word on this album. So think about that. And if you solve the riddle, put it in the comments and we'll
Okay.
send you out some stickers or something. So until next week, everybody, this is The Haunting Truth. And we thank you for joining us in the garden today. So stay curious and watch out for strange men with umbrellas.
Yeah, please.
Bye.
Bye.